Hi everyone. Hi Charlene, hi Titania, and hi Chronic Sword. Hope you're all doing great. I'm Karl, the Joe Rogan you got of Timu, and our guest today is Taron Pounds, also known as Indestructible. Did I get your name right? Is it Taron?
Yeah, you said it. You got it the first try. I've been a teacher for like 5 years, and I've never gotten a student to say it right, even at the end of the semester. So yeah, thanks for bringing me on, man.
It's a pleasure. I mean, I think I first caught you during the OGL crisis, and I've been following some of your stuff, and I mean, you talk about a lot of stuff, and most of it is really good advice. I'm just going to say that right up front.
Well, I love the most of it. I would agree with you. Maybe some of it is good advice, but
Okay, let's rephrase that. Most of it is worth a try. Okay. So, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? Because I know that you're a musician. You just mentioned you're a teacher. You're a designer of Vagabond. You've written a ton of 5e stuff. How did you get to this whole thing in the first place?
Yeah. So really, I went to school really specializing in jazz studies and guitar performance. So my degree isn't in design or graphic design or anything quite like that. It's in music. And I guess it was right around like 2016, 2017. Started getting into D&D with just a couple buddies that were like, into local music or arts or theater scene. They all kind of like bleed together. Everybody kind of, gets to know each other that way. And so we started up a D&D group, and that was like the first time I had really tried D&D. And we stuck with that campaign for about 3 years. I was like probably about a year after really starting D&D and really kind of getting to know what it was. It was like, oh wait, we can like make stuff for this game that like we can play, like we can just do that. So I had always been really interested in game design, more as like kind of a passing like fascination, or like I'd listen to discussions on it and everything, but I'd never really like gotten into making my own thing. Mostly because coding is very, very hard. And
I know.
I yeah. So whenever it was like, hey, I could actually like design stuff for a game, like I can write my own adventures and like I can make my own character options and everything like that. Okay, like this is kind of sick. Um, so that started up right at about like 2017, 2018. I started really, really like um trying to make stuff for the game. And that got into classes, and classes seem to be kind of what I'm known for this day, at least for the 5e realm. But that's where I met guys like Benjamin Huffman, Ross Leiser, Heavy Arms. There's a lot of people over on the DMs Guild who like I kind of found that as a marketplace where I could post up my own stuff. And then kind of getting to know them kind of got me in touch with other people in the like gaming industry. And I eventually got like platinum bestsellers, won an ENnie for my work on Home Field Advantage with Trekaros, actually, another YouTuber here. Um, he was like the project manager, and basically that thing would not have gotten made had it not been for Trek. Um, but yeah, after kind of all that, whenever the OGL fallout was going on, I was in the middle of like 3 different class designs for 5e, and I was like, man, I had my whole content schedule planned out for like 2023. I was going to be live streaming class designs. I was going to be like discussing more stuff about 5e in this update. And then, the world fell apart. I think I got started with YouTube. Um, I really got started with YouTube during the pandemic, and it right around that time it felt like everything was really secure. We all knew kind of like, hey, here's the kind of content we can make for D&D. People are eating it up like crazy.
I mean,
And then after the OGL, it's like every bit of momentum we got from the pandemic just got wiped out.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, before
I
the OGL, it was like things were stable for like what 20 years since 2003, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
I would say better than stable. Honestly, for me, it was like I was at a teaching gig and I was making so much money making content for D&D that like I left my job because it got to be too expensive for me to continue teaching because I was making so much money off the
Oh,
DM's
okay.
Guild and everything. Yeah. So I had branched away from the DM's Guild and started up my own storefront. Um, so I was going into the OGL. And then that's right at the time that we heard this is what's going down. So then kind of like the year after that, like I guess what was it, the March or April after that? Um, I had kind of toyed around with this thing where it was like I had started leaning in more and more on the OSR, kind of the mindset, kind of fleshed out by Merkborg and the way that they're handling quicker stories and like let's get through more of an adventure rather than let's get through more of your character sheet. I really, really like what a lot of the mindsets for OSR play were, a lot of the philosophies for OSR play. And really, Vagabond was like a huge research project. I had told my audience, like, hey, here's kind of my foundations, but like I kind of know this kind of game that I have in mind, but I don't really know it yet. I don't like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we're miles away. Um, and it was from really kind of branching out and trying a lot of other games that I think Vagabond really, really stuck. Finding things that I loved in other games and figuring out how to make a D&D like experience that I was like, this needs to run in a way that addresses all of my issues I've ever had with 5e. But it doesn't need to be 5e. And that means in Vagabond, character creation, dice mechanics, everything to exploration, social interaction. I mean, like every single thing you can see almost beat for beat. I wanted to kind of make the game that I wanted to play. And that really came from a lot of inspiration from a whole lot of other stuff. And it's crazy how much this might have started as a bit of a like, well, I'd want 5e, but like not really tied to Wizards of the Coast. Just straight up, there's like no DNA of D&D anymore. It's at this point it's more inspired by Dragonbane, Merkborg, some stuff in Shadowdark, and I mean Vossen. So really, it's like more of a free league joint than anything else. But there's like Black Hack is involved in there. As a part of the research, I just went through and read like, I mean, as many of the old rulebooks as I could before third edition, and I really found a love for the Moldvay edit. Everything with Basic Expert. There was like I got more of the sense that it was more important to make a game that knew it was a tabletop game rather than a game that was trying to cover the territory of a video game.
How's that?
So like,
and what's this?
So I think that really after third edition, Dungeons and Dragons got really, I keep calling it simulationist heavy, and I'll get a better definition of that at some point. What I really try to think of that as is I think that they tried to turn a tabletop game into an analog video game engine, right? Like there are so many things really that you get a benefit out of having the computer calculate for you that I think they tried to throw on the character sheet. And as a result, I feel like a lot of stuff after third edition kind of had this like what I call super simulation heavy. Usually if it's including rules for things like starvation or like suffocation, specific rules for drowning versus like, I don't know, being buried in sand, whatever we want to say. I think that that's leaning in a lot more on like highly simulationist. Whereas in the OSR, it's way more like this is just kind of what's going on, and we kind of we don't need a rule to tell us that you're drowning. We don't need a rule that says you're buried in sand. You got to get out of there, or else you're going to suffocate in like 2 minutes. What are you doing? So
I mean, is that
yeah.
why 5e seems to lean so heavily onto electronic tools like online character sheets and spreadsheets and apps and so on?
Right. Yeah, well, and I think that they need that. Like, I think any system would benefit from a digital toolkit like that. But I think that at some point it becomes a necessity. And I
Mhm.
think that that's kind of what happened with 5e. And the reason why like 5e really took off during the pandemic was because the digital tool sets were so readily available, whereas everybody else was still kind of catching up. You know, Demiplane wasn't really a big thing at that point. D&D Beyond was like huge for D&D and online play. So we saw a lot of people really picking up the game around that time. I mean, to this day, it'd be interesting to see the data on like the D&D Beyond's current like user base. Um, but I do know like I believe if I recall this correctly, I mean they've been saying that we've had a drop off ever since the pandemic ended, and then I think after the OGL there was another kind of sharp drop off. But yeah, I mean these days it was like I I started trying to make the game that I wanted to make. Really in the last 2.5 years, it's been project management, design, doing live streams of the process, play testing, learning about like running this kind of a large play test involving 300 plus people. It's been, yeah, learning about logistics of shipping, marketing, all this stuff.
Yeah, you're not kidding when you were
It's
saying
been
it's a research project.
it's been a crash course in just what it takes to make a game. And yeah, now I feel like I just know every single branch of this stuff. Maybe not 100%, but I feel pretty confident with it. So yeah, but now we're currently just waiting on the print run for Vagabond. And then I get that shipped out and we move on to the next thing. So yeah.
Was there any part of the process that kind of blindsided you? Like, wait, hang on, I have to do this too, or was it like did it all fall into place naturally?
Community management. Um, really, really, that was the thing that kind of took me by surprise. Like, um, it's just you really have to know who's there to play test who's there to play test your game, and then who might try to claim some kind of ownership of it because like they were in there at the get go. Really trying to develop my own ethics for like sticking true to my vision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's I think the biggest deal with indie creators right now. And the reason why I honestly just like a lot more indie games than I do a lot of the big design team style games. Um, or design team. Yeah, there we go. Um, you know, there could be a lot of crazy talent on a lot of these design teams and everything. But I think that indie games just have a certain charm to them because the creator had a single vision and they were able to execute on that vision without disagreement, without like a lot of conflict within the team about what should get published. You know, I look at a game like Into the Odd and I'm like, that was Chris McDowell just doing him. Same thing with Knave or Shadowdark. You know, there was playtesting and there was feedback, but like at the end of the day, that was their game.
As opposed to the marketing team deciding that, yeah, we need to have this thing in there to sell.
I mean that. You know, I mean, people clash on what all they think should or shouldn't be in a game. Um, and that can sometimes lead to headbutting and yada yada yada. But like, insofar as whatever like I kind of wanted to put into the game, there's plenty of moments where it was like, all right, I'm gonna take the dogs out, and then like I got to think about this for a second to get away from the computer. I go take the dogs out, and then suddenly it was like, oh my god, I just solved this, and I've got to rewrite like half the game. And then I like come in, take 8 hours, do that, and then like I release it, and then people are like, "Whoa, what happened?" And I'm like, "Trust me, just trust the process. Let's play test it." And then, yeah, there's a lot of that, and those are great moments. It's very, very fun. Um, I think my most signature one of those was I was working on my class, the Vanguard for 5e.
Mm-hmm.
And this is it got ported into Vagabond, but like this is just kind of like an example of that moment. I was literally like on my back porch trying to get my dog in because he was barking at the neighbors. And then I was like, trying to think about why tanking hasn't felt good in a TTRPG. Like, why does it not feel that you can like do hard crowd control? Um, and then it just clicked for me because I was writing for 5e and I was like, oh, because everything's happening off your turn. This needs to work off the ready action. Oh my God. And then I just came in here and for the next like 12 hours, the rest of the class just like fell into place.
Oh, okay, I
Um,
see what you mean.
those those little eureka moments. Yeah, it's mostly like the problem with tanking, especially for 5e, is that with individual initiative, everything that you want to tank is happening off your turn,
Yeah, exactly.
right? So if you're basing like this is a class that should be based off of the ready action, you can intercede instead of waiting on something to maybe hit you. Because like this has been a thing with a lot of tank kind of options that they made officially was like they had to do this weird sidestep where it was like, oh well, they have disadvantage to hit your allies, but they have advantage to hit you, and it's like so that was the trade-off is like a soft crowd control, not like a hard crowd control, almost like a taunt tank. And that was about as close as they were really eager to let it kind of go. But I just don't think that like they really had the moment where it was like, this fixes the problem. And I really just kind of felt like everything fell into place whenever I had that one thought, and I had never seen anybody do it. And I was like, oh God, it's my like weird mad scientist moment where I can just like tinker, you know?
No, I mean I know the satisfaction of when you come up with a nice, clean rule that works. It's pretty awesome. So,
Yeah.
Fallen Phoenix 4 is saying all the jokes about you cutting everything.
Yeah. That kind of became like a little joke within the server was like, hey, what's going on this week? Is Taron just going to cut like every ancestry from the game? Or because it would be like, I mean, suddenly there would be an idea that it was literally like, we got to get rid of subclasses. It's bloating out character sheets. We got to get rid of it. I have a vision for it. We got to clean it up, and I'll show you guys what I mean. And like, it has the reactions. People get really attached to certain ideas in the game, but like at the end of the day, if you have an idea that works and you believe hard enough in that idea that it would improve your game, I don't really know how you can justify um I need to not change this or people are going to be mad at me. If they're going to be mad at you, just ignore it and move on, because like your game's vision is way more important than whether or not a couple people decide to make a lifelong enemy out of you.
I mean, again,
You gotta have faith to the art,
yeah, and I mean, if you try to please everyone, you end up with something that is very bland.
That's the thing. Like, oh yeah, that's right. Chronic was a playtester. Subclasses, spell types, yeah, got rid of any schools or any. Yeah, I remember that. There was a time where like we had different classifications for all the different classes, like similar to what D&D is doing: warrior, mage, priest, and expert. Um, but we just broke it down to warrior, mage, and or warrior, mage, and expert. And it eventually got to a point where it was like, these aren't doing anything. They're just like an arbitrary block we're using for perks to prevent some classes from picking this up. But then we've got people that are like, well, I'm playing this and I would really like to pick it. So I was like, scrap it, get rid of it. All right, cool. And then it was one of those things where like it started from a point of throwing everything at the wall. And then as I think the thing that really helped Vagabond get to where it was we chipped off so much off that wall. Like it was we tried to polish it down.
Okay, so you started from a position of everything at the kitchen sink, and then you don't need this, you don't need this, you don't need this, until you get basically the essential of the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Like we might want the pipe off the kitchen sink. We might want that faucet, but like we don't need that bowl. We don't need the drain. Whatever. But it was really trying to start from a point of here's the kind of game that we know that we want. But really, is it necessary to include so much of this stuff we've just taken as tradition for years? Right? Like, I mean, part of what I love about Vagabond right now is this is a completely brand new system from the ground up. It's gonna feel familiar, but like nothing's ever rolled a d20 like Vagabond. This magic system is inspired by errant and neoclassical geek revival, um, but I haven't seen anybody do anything quite like this before.
I quite liked
Um,
how you implemented that. By the way, if I can just bring up the picture
yeah.
from here. I mean, okay, you've got two things that I really like. Is that one of them is that it's very freeform. I mean,
Yes.
I mostly play Easy D6 these days, and the magic system there isn't completely freeform, but you've got it a little more structured. Plus,
Yeah.
the other big thing is that magic can fail, which is like I never understood why magic should always go off flawlessly when you can. I don't know. If you hit something with a hammer, you have a chance of failing. If you break physics, it always works.
Right. Yeah, and the thing for me though is oh, by the way, the artist on this is Guillaume Bonnet. He did all of the technical diagrams that you're going to see throughout the book. Um, also goes by Zaz B on social media. So the thing for me was like I don't like fancy and magic. Um, I have had my gripes with fancy and magic for years. And for me, I wanted to make a magic system that felt like what I would think magic felt like. One of my favorite cinematics is actually from Castlevania.
Hmm.
Um, have you seen the show?
Yeah,
So there's
I'm
like,
actually watching the second one right now, Nocturne.
oh, nice, nice. Um, so you remember there's that scene where it's Alucard, Trevor, and Sypha going in and raiding Dracula's castle, and they have
Hmm.
the fight with like the horde. Yeah, that scene meant so much to me because it was like the way that Sypha uses magic there with like raising up the ice wall and like making the knives and everything. I was like, that to me should be one spell, not like because I look at it in D&D terms and I'm like, oh well, that's ice knife. Oh well, that's ice wall. Oh well, that's
Hmm.
I ice platform. I don't know, um, but what I wanted to do was make a system that felt like I can do that kind of quick casting, like you shape the magic the way I want to, and like you feel more like a mage rather than like I know a spell that will shoot fire from my fingertips, but that's it. Like Vancian magic is too much of a key to me.
A key in what
Every
sense?
single spell, yeah, every single spell in Vancian magic is an answer looking for a problem.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
Um,
okay. Yeah.
yeah, they're all very specific, and it always kind of feels like it requires adventures to be written in a way where it's like, well, this bad thing happens unless they have this particular spell ready to go, and that 9 times out of 10, that particular spell is lesser restoration. Um, but yeah, it's like there's kind of the dowsing rod spells or like detect magic, dispel magic, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, not to
Um,
mention how some stuff can derail everything, like detect evil, speak with dead, detect magic.
yeah, but that's the thing is like if you don't take those spells, you are a worse character. Um, it's like the game is built around you in a way with the expectation of you having those spells. They think about it so much that it's like coded for in every stat block. Like,
Hmm.
we see so often this thing can't be removed except from the power of a wish. This thing can't be cured except by like greater restoration or whatever.
I see what you
Um,
mean about about them being keys. Yeah.
yeah, it's just so specific that like it's weird because I kind of think that every time they release a new like book that expands on the portfolio of spells, I kind of look at it and I'm like, yeah, but like these spells just aren't going to be as good as some of the other ones unless they're absurd, like Silvery Barbs, because the game was written for a certain number of these Vancian spells in place. There's like an expectation where like if I play Curse of Strahd, well, that was written with the player's handbook in mind, not the player's handbook and Xanthar's guide and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and Strixhaven and whatever else you want to throw on there. So it's this thing where I'm like, fancy and magic has kind of held D&D back for me personally. Plus, like, I mean, I just wanted to write something different. I wanted to write a magic system, and this is a big thing to me. So yeah.
So it's actually based. It's a mana-based system here, so you've got a certain amount of resources you can use to cast spells.
Yeah. So you're using mana. It's almost like spell points from D&D. So mana is like, it's measured in points. That should feel pretty familiar to anybody who's played a Final Fantasy. Mana is, oh god, you got the spread backwards. The way that this is going to kind of work out, basically with the magic system, you're going to have these different spells. Let's say it in this case is disintegrate. Okay, so I know that disintegrate. Well, hey, there we go. Like disintegrate says that it does something. Like it has an effect. It has an effect or it has a damage type. So it's like a damage base in here.
Okay.
In this case, I can cast this to do shock damage. This is the Emperor Palpatine spell. Or I can cast it to do the effect, which is like you're able to just literally disintegrate something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you can do with that is the target is whatever you choose the delivery to be. So if you want it to be a cone of disintegration and have this effect, or be it a big bolt of like red lightning, a cube of red lightning or disintegration, a glyph that if someone walks over it or touches it or whatever, this thing goes off. You go up and you touch somebody, this happens, a sphere of it, a line of it, whatever you want to do. You want to put it on a sword so that it happens whenever that sword cuts somebody, you can do that. And it's all from one spell, not 4 or 5 or 6, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
So you're going to have less spells on your character sheet, because I always like I just rolled up a 13th level druid for a thing. And that took me 2 hours just to pick having 24 spells on that character sheet was something. So yeah, I decided to reduce down the mental load overall. And I think spellcasters had a lot of mental load, which was basically just a lot of I choose this thing, which means I get the get out of jail free card. And so over here in Vagabond, though, I really wanted it to help inspire creativity, not force you into constantly being thinking, is this the right square peg for this square hole?
Yeah. So basically, rather than handing the players, okay, here's a menu of options, pick one of these, and there are 3,000 items. You can pick any of these 3,000. You will forget half of them and just use one most of the time.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, we're seeing this kind of happen with like, well, it seems like they're doing nerfs now, but like conjure minor elementals. It kind of became a thing where everybody was like, I mean, I think even Treant Monk did a video where he was like, I'm just straight up not going to build around this spell because it's objectively the best thing they've ever put into the game. And like, it's not even optimizing anymore. It's not optimizing for fun. This is like, well, no, duh, you picked this. And I don't really want that to be a thing.
That means kind of something that's so good that it's not really an option because you have to take it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Like Conjure Minor Elementals was so good that it was like, if you don't take it, you are objectively a worse character because you're missing out on like 400 points of damage. Like, whereas over here, I wanted to make it to where every spell felt like it was flavorful, but it didn't feel like one that you had to take. Everything should hit the right vibe, and that this was the big thing for me. I wanted the narrative of the effect to be really cool,
mm-hmm.
and not tell enough of a story to where like if you took something that did not do damage, you would still want to take it. It had to be that cool, like, yeah.
So speaking of vibe, do you have like a default setting for Vagabond, or is it open? Because I went over some of the rules really quickly, but I didn't really dig deep into the book yet.
Yeah, there is no anticipated setting. Like I said, this is just me kind of working on this. Um, I wanted to write a system that could work with any OSR material. If you want to play in Greyhawk with this, you can. There's also a bunch of other really cool campaign settings out there that you can play with Vagabond. One of my favorites is Vast in the Dark by Charles Ferguson Avery. There's also The Gardens of Yin by Emmy Allen. If you wanted to just straight up play some old D&D material using Vagabond, you absolutely can. Um, but looking at like the research data from, I think it was like D&D Beyond in like 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I think they said something like over 95% of tables play in homebrew settings, not Forgotten
All right,
Realms.
95. Please. All right.
Yeah, so to me, I was like, I that makes me think that the world is genuinely not that important. Like
Yeah,
it's just
fair enough. Yeah.
not. If that many people just don't care and they just want a system of mechanic, then like I'll give that to you all day long.
So Fallen Phoenix, and if someone in Vagabond also wanted to keep their Vancian feel of magic, they can just write down the combos and interactions they want with their spell. So yeah, basically write your own homemade spell list. That works.
Yep.
Question: where did the name Vagabond come from?
So, God, this was kicked around so many times. This the idea for it was like I wanted to make a system that could be solo, group, or co-op, or solo, co-op, or guided. There we go. Where like you can play it with a table, or to me, I think the best way that you can make a GM friendly game, what is like the most GM friendly, a system that can run itself.
Okay.
I had always thought that like solo play was always really interesting, but I hadn't really played a fantasy system that made me feel like solo was like, this is what I want to do. I want to run it in this game. It was more like, oh, okay, well, with a lot of fiddling, I can play solo, but I still kind of feel like I'm seeing too much behind the curtain and still kind of relying on DM chops to like kind of do this. So Vagabond was written in a way to where like you could play this solo if you wanted to, and the game is written from the perspective of knowing players are most likely going to see stat blocks. A lot of the system is designed to be like, if they know that like the fire elemental is weak to water magic, no duh. Like, there's a couple things that I was kind of like, if someone brings up, well, I mean, they just nuked that zombie with holy energy whenever they got around, and I was like, yeah, that's what you do. So a lot of this was kind of written from that kind of perspective, but like the name Vagabond was sort of doing this like, I like this idea of a game that you could like kind of do your own carousing or your own adventuring with a character that you had just played at a table with 4 hours ago. Like if you
Okay.
wanted to tell your own little like solo whatever, yeah. And so like Vagabond, this idea of like a solo wanderer, um, and there's a lot of other games that are kind of doing this style of like naming. You got Knave, Errant, right? Like Errant being a wanderer, and Knave just being a lowly peasant kind of thing. I thought Vagabond was kind of in that same kind of vibe.
Oh yeah, I mean definitely.
And for anybody that's asking, it was not actually Tales from the Floating Vagabond. I wasn't really familiar with that game at the time, and whenever I looked at the trademark, nothing was registered on that, so I was like, yeah, but
Okay, what about the pulp part of pulp fantasy? What's the? I mean, I know you mentioned Castlevania. Is that the kind of the? What are some examples of the vibe you're going for there?
Conan, Dungeon Crawler Karl. I think Dungeon Crawler Karl is like the most recent kind of example. It's I think the reason why I think like Dungeon Crawler Karl is so brilliant, like Matt Zinnemann wrote a version of a fantasy book that feels like an actual D&D table.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I'm going to be playing a pugilist that isn't wearing any pants and he runs around barefoot. And who are you playing? I'm a cat wizard. Great. Here we go. Like that's a D&D table. 100%. They win fights by throwing dynamite at goblins. Like, yeah, that's a D&D table. But like the pulp side of it really comes from like I think that D&D has gone into this realm of a pseudo kind of like Marvel Cinematic Universe and like anime influenced voice on fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
where like a lot of 5e characters are superheroes, straight up. Like your sheet might say, you know, Ranger, but you're playing Hawkeye. Like the idea there is supposed to be that you're getting powers at which your character stops feeling kind of average human at like second level, you know. Um and to me, I like the idea of a hero not exactly being a superhero but being like Herculean, right?
Okay.
I like this idea of like, let's not make you a god quite yet, but like it's cool if you're a demigod. You should be able to do some shit that is pretty special. Um but we have to keep it in check where like we still want there to be a bit of a challenge after you get your quote unquote like main features kicking on. And with pulp fantasy, this is a moniker that like I know a lot of people have kind of been asking the same questions about like what does this even mean. um I think that Tolkien fantasy, I kind of go into this in the prelude. um a lot of people's idea of fantasy is so much based off of Lord of the Rings,
Mm-hmm.
and Tolkien fantasy is unique. Um, I don't know too many writers who write like Tolkien because Tolkien's fantasy isn't really fighting heavy. It's more about the interpersonal relationships of a bunch of people who like come from a bunch of different backgrounds and they've been given an insane task that they have to do for the good of the world. And it Tolkien fantasy set a precedent for like all the high fantasy to come after it. And that is there is a world ending cataclysm that is threatening everything. The heroes are given something to be heroic for, right? Um, and we see like guys like Brandon Sanderson use this. Uh, I I haven't read enough Terry Pratchett to know whether or not he does.
Mm,
That'd be kind of interesting if he has like a world ender situation going on.
I'm going to say no. Usually, it's more. There's something that's. I think the worst one would be like at a continental level scale, but mostly it's people-sized problems,
Yeah,
like city-sized problems or country-sized problems, rather than oh no, it's going to swallow the whole world.
yeah. There's this is a theme I tend to see in a lot of, you know, the pulp based fantasy is there is something cataclysmic going on, and like it's up to our heroes to stop it or else this world is going to get destroyed. um like I mean, going back to Brandon Sanderson, Mistborn has ruin. If Ven does not stop ruin, there's no telling what's going to happen to the literal laws of reality for their world. um like if we look at World of Warcraft, the Cataclysm. Now that's more of like a post APOC thing with Azeroth. But constantly, whenever they're trying to come up with a new scenario, whatever, it's always like, no, the Lich King's gonna freeze the world, like this, you know, whatever.
Yeah, it's like apocalypse after apocalypse after apocalypse. Yeah.
Yeah, and but that to me is like that's the essence of fantasy. It's not like whenever I'm thinking about fantasy worlds that get built out, I'm like, I don't want to live in any of these things because they're
Yeah, no
all about
kidding.
to end. Like they're all about to end, you know. There was a really funny quote by Tolkien. What was it like? I want to what was it? I want to be in a world with dragons, but I don't want to be their neighbor, or something like that. Um, yeah, it's like well, so anyways, kind of going back on this, with pulp fantasy, um, the reason why I'm emphasizing this is because I think that a lot of high fantasy games, really after Critical Role leaned in a lot on these are narrative heavy games with a combat engine strapped on that we barely really engage with. And, you know, to people that want to play that way, that's all good. I wanted Vagabond to be an action game. I like combat. I like exploration. And it's crazy to me how like I keep hearing these people love playing D&D, but then I'm like, well, okay, what do you guys usually do? Well, we sit around and act, you know, we role play out shopkeeping for 4 hours. And I'm like, that ain't me. I like that, you know. I wanted to
Right.
make an engine that felt like you were playing like Dark Souls or Skyrim or just something more open world, maybe like, you know, Legend of Zelda, not like not a quote unquote role playing engine. This is a storytelling engine, and all of that role play stuff happens naturally at the table, anyways. So, yeah, that's for me. Pulp fantasy is way more about like we need to emphasize action. It needs to be a thing of like you guys are fantasy heroes tasked with doing weird stuff and like probably horrific and cataclysmic stuff. Um, so like the game's engine is meant to make combat actually interesting and compelling. Um, I wanted to give exploration like more of a narrative heart in the system, and yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there. Um, wait, does it need 120 gigabytes like the new Oblivion? No, it's a 40 megabyte PDF.
So we're saying again, the vibe is more Conan or Discworld than Game of Thrones. See, okay.
Conan, Elric. Yeah, see, I think a lot of people, especially with Game of Thrones, really wanted D&D to feel like political intrigue. And they never really offered really solid support for political intrigue for any of the adventures for Wizards of the Coast. Um, but like whenever your class is giving you 90% of your features for combat,
Good
that
point. Yeah.
doesn't really make me think that they think it's a political intrigue game. Like, yeah.
Plus, I mean, like, do you really need rules for political intrigue? Because that sounds like the kind of thing where the random element doesn't really help.
And see, that's the thing. If we don't need the rules for it, then then to me, I kind of think that like if people are still playing it that way, though, maybe we have a what is it like a some expectation isn't getting met there, or like maybe there's been a misunderstanding of some kind. But like if people are playing the game and they're like, no, this is a great political intrigue system, I'm going to be like, please let me know what's going on. Because like I don't really think that I wrote this to support that in a meaningful way. Um, most everybody's classes are giving you straight up exploration and combat features. It's pretty rare that you get a social feature because I just don't really think that like I don't know. I would rather the role play that happens at the table be your social engine, not a number on your character sheet. Yeah, and I there's a great quote actually from Gravity Falls. Uh, whenever Grunkle Stan sees Dipper and Ford, they're playing like a D&D knockoff. He Stan like picks up the book and he's like, what was it? Yeah, only a bunch of nerds would think that charisma was a superpower. And I was like, God, that's so good. Oh, that's so good. But yeah, like if political intrigue is a thing that people want, um, there's other games that do that, you know. Blades in the Dark, I think, handles this stuff pretty interestingly. I think even Vampire the Masquerade, if you wanted to steal some stuff over there,
The one that really surprised me, I think, was the one. Was that called? You only have the whole game is set around the Tea Party. I forgot what the name was, but some kind of Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights kind of thing. That was. It was a weird concept, but the idea of using that as a social resolution system seemed really interesting.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I I think that if you had something where I was like, okay, if you tell me, hey, Taron, we need you to write a political intrigue system, honestly, I'd have a really hard time not just wholesale making it something like eat the Reich's objective mechanic. Basically, it's just like you've got a small tracker, and the number of successes keeps adding onto this tracker.
Is that the one?
Um,
Is that the one you were talking about for must combat in one of your? I forgot if
yes,
it was a recent video, but yeah.
yeah, it is. I mean, it's essentially just a progress tracker, progress clocks, whatever we want to say. Um, that just makes it feel like there's a bit more like mechanic weight to social checks, or if players really want to get inventive. I say inventive and then I immediately go like, oh yeah, kidnap the princess and let's see how that helps your objective with like persuading the king here. It's like, could it meaningfully do that? Well, I guess so, but yeah,
Yeah,
I do like the open-endedness of that kind of an idea. And I think that like getting too far into the weeds of like, well, you get this many diplomat points for what you did here. No, that took away some of that from your karma score. I'm like, that's a video game. That's a video game. I want this to feel like whenever you play it, you're not doing math, you're not having to track stuff. You are just like, we're just playing the game and rolling dice, and I'm not having to manage numbers.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, I did want to ask you something about exploration, but first we've got a question from Titania. Would recent news about the D&D Creative Commons have changed anything about Vagabond development?
No.
I think this is about
uh,
it, putting it out as completely on the Creative Commons, yeah, rather than on another license.
So my problem with Creative Commons is that I feel like it's confusing for most people who want to make stuff. Um, I'm doing the same thing that Kelsey did and the same thing that the guys at Stockholm Cartel do, and that is I'm doing a release of responsibility. I am not going to get in the way of you making the thing that you want to make with Vagabond. I'm just straight up saying, just say I didn't make it. Like, just say really clearly, it's not affiliated with Land of the Blind. I don't want to go to court over fighting anything. In fact, I feel that if I went to court over the fact that somebody made content for my game, that is basically industry suicide.
It sounds
Um,
like TSR
yeah,
from way back.
it's
Yeah,
it is absolutely the worst move that any publisher could make, especially after the OGL situation. Um, so no, I think that the Creative Commons is confusing because there's some people that would see the like share alike tag on there and just assume that that means that now the thing that I made, I have to put in the Creative Commons like that, when it's not 100% what that means. Um, I in some ways, I actually think that Wizards of the Coast made a huge mistake by doing that.
how's that?
Um, that could be a whole other discussion. Um, but yeah, I kind of agreed with like Linda Codega put an article out about that where they were saying that Creative Commons actually is not super fantastic for this, but like we'll take what we can get. Um, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like how much at the end of the day legally does it affect the people's ability to continue to create for the game? For me, um, nothing about the system at this point is using any mechanic of 5e. I'm genuinely trying to think. Um, you're more talking about names that D&D has used. Was there any monster or spell name or mechanic you feel you had to leave out because of fear of litigation? Uh, if they came after me because I said Displacer Beast in a thing at some point, that would be a like pick your battles kind of a situation. Um, pretty much all of that stuff because they did not revoke the original OGL. Um, if they were really going to try to come after like the deck of many things as like a trademark, maybe then we have that conversation. But until that day happens, I'm not going to really worry too much about it. I removed any mechanic that referenced something that had like a similar name to something in 5e, but because of the magic system you all have already seen, and once you see how the checks resolve using the D20, you're going to see that this is a completely different monster.
And if I'm not mistaken, mechanics are not covered by copyright or intellectual property. Yeah?
Yeah, like there's some stuff that they consider to be IP that like I'm really curious whether or not it could be considered part of their IP. It was really super funny. In about like March, we started hearing about like because I think that they had said that they accidentally put like Strahd in the Creative Commons, or like the Beholder was in the Creative Commons.
Yeah, I
we were
heard
like
this.
watching them, yeah. But I haven't. I've only heard about them going after one company in the past for using what they considered to be a trademark, and it was for the Mind Flayer.
Okay.
But I mean, that's literally the only case of it I've ever heard. Hey, bud.
Hey, puppy.
He's. I don't know if he's. Hey, bud. Oh, he wants out. 1 sec.
Take your time. I love the Beholder
right.
headrest, by the way.
Do what?
As I said, I love the Beholder headrest cover, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I know. I got this beanie off of Etsy like 5 years ago, and I wore it once for like a Ren Fair thing. I'm trying to remember what it was, and it was like, it's so uncomfortable. These things just keep
Really?
bobbing into your forehead, but it's great on the seat. Like,
yeah.
But yeah. So I'm just doing a release of responsibility, and what that means is, straight up, I'm just saying if people want to make stuff for the game, that's all good. As far as like, am I worried about Wizards of the Coast bringing up any kind of litigation for me against, like, I don't know, my barbarian is called a barbarian. I'm not worried. Yeah. In some cases where I might be worried, there were like, we went with a more old school name for something that I know others have used. I think we stuck to the Warp Beast for the Displacer Beast. And I called the Beholder an Ogler. And I think that was kind of about it. Well, I mean, no, I say that was kind of about it. No, there was a lot more, but offhand, that's kind of what I was, yeah. But
yeah, this sounds like another thing that you wouldn't have thought about when you get into designing a game, like the legal ramifications of picking up stuff or using stuff.
Yeah, there's the like, I'm getting into it and I'm starting to understand what it means and what they could come after me for. And then there's like, are they really gonna try to put a dog in that fight kind of a thing? Like this has been kind of the fun thing with learning in business. What I mean by this is like, really, whenever they're gonna sue somebody, especially after all the problems that they've had in the last 3 years about over litigation, they've got to consider anytime they sue someone to be a potential PR disaster. And if we can show like the financial hit of what it means for them to sue somebody, especially whenever, or like take heavy-handed legal action, like what they did with the Pinkerton situation.
Oh god, yeah.
We can show real quick, hey, the consumers aren't happy about that. So you guys have got to actually pick your battles now and can't just go after everybody who does something you don't like. Because now you guys just seem like you're very slap happy, and but like creatively, like you rarely hear about too many people going after others for plagiarism. Most of the time in this scene, it's like, hey, just most people are cool enough that they're gonna put in the like, yeah, this inspired our game. It's very rare that we see anything like that actually fought out in court.
All right. Okay, so I wanted to ask you. Yeah, okay. About exploration. How do you make exploration interesting?
Okay. So part of this was there's a couple new subsystems. Um, some of this was um, there were ideas I kind of got from Vossen. The study die mechanic is advantage from Vossen. So what this is it's an additional D6 that you get if you spend, let's say, 6 hours studying, right? And this can be information that you use to like kind of prepare for the day ahead, or hey, I think that we're probably running into some undead. I'm gonna go spend some time at my church and just kind of do my cleric thing, and then you get a studied die. This is a D6 you can add to any roll as it pertains to your choice, whatever. Now, this is one mechanic of this, but adding this one mechanic in from Vossen turned into, oh, we can use that as a ranger would get it, or a hunter in our system would get this from traveling, right? There's little bonuses like that. As far as like what makes the exploration side of it, I guess it's more of a downtime thing. With exploration, I I think that we give a lot of support for knowing that this is a big sandbox home, like what do I put it? System agnostic game, right? Um, I'm going to be releasing this soon. I wrote a hex crawl generator that will put together different maps that you've sewn together from other games to make, like, if you wanted to make an infinitely generating world, you can. If you find like one of Dyson Logos's hex crawls, you can piece that in. Um, Part of what makes exploration fun to me is honestly the random events. I think some people might think that it's a chore, a slog, something like that. I think a lot of people just aren't really like, I maybe they're not rolling it right for them. I tend to think that if people really don't like random encounters, I'm like, well, then roll it beforehand. And then whenever you're at the table, you've got the list right there and you're a little bit more prepared for it. Maybe do something like that. But random tables, I think, keep things interesting as a game master at the very least. And I don't try to do this like I I don't go super procedurally with it. Um, I'm like, okay, so you're moving into this hex. Okay, cool. Like, let's see what's going on. All right, so you guys have been traveling now for a little while, and then suddenly there's a massive, bloated black crow that just falls out of the sky and squishes in front of you.
Like, where did that
And
come
then
from?
as soon as that happens, it rains frogs. What's going on? Like weirdness with it. But yeah, with the exploration side of it, I've written a lot of perks that will reward you for engaging with exploration, but they're not forcing your hand there. The hunter is not forced to, you have to be the navigator. The hunter is more so focused on crit reduction. Like our hunter is not in the same ballpark as D&D's ranger. Hunter's mark for us is you roll 2d20s and use the higher result, whereas the advantage of our game is you get a d6 bonus to the roll. So like they're actually getting more guaranteed crit fishing than any other class. So combat is the central core to every class, and if they want to engage with a lot of the exploration mechanics, those are handled by perks, which are kind of like our feats. And tables that don't want to engage with that, which I know that there's people who don't like it, it's not an expectation. So like I personally like the random encounter hex crawl stuff. I think that that's personally pretty fun, and I don't see a big issue with that as a thing. I think the idea that it's just universally agreed upon that exploration sucks is kind of turning a subjective opinion into a general, an objective one. Um, yeah, like it's kind of like there's a popular opinion that it's not fun, and I think for those people who it's not fun with, they don't have to engage with that element. Um, but for me, I still like the procedure. I still like the hex crawl, as it were, for older games, But yeah.
Okay, so going back to what you said, so basically your class design is based. Okay, everyone is good at tracking things in a different way, and then you can slot in these extra perks to be better at exploration or finding stuff or what have you. All right.
Yeah. So like perks are more about like refining something you want to do in combat, maybe picking up something that would be a non-combat skill, maybe something that would be refining a particular spell or a particular like thing you can already do, giving you a different option, unlocking a new ritual, things like that.
Okay.
I think the perks carry a lot of our heavy load for the like role play heavy side of it.
Nice. Okay, so let me think. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that when someone goes just like fully randomly generated, I do find it a bit boring because there's like no continuity from one thing to the next. But yeah, I mean, like, especially things like, okay, you roll 3 random encounters, you put them together in one encounter, and then you can start to kind of plot a thread through that. I think that can be quite a lot of fun. It's just if you turn it into a complete roguelike, you never know what's going to happen next. That's when it gets a bit weird.
Yeah, it can feel a bit like awkward, I guess, whenever there's like nothing happens, right? And then I'm like, okay, well at that point, if nothing happens and you feel like that's boring, make something happen.
Yeah,
Like,
just
like
pick something yourself. Yeah,
the role is a suggestion.
exactly. Yeah,
That's the thing. It's the role is a suggestion. If your players are bored and they want to hit something with a stick, you better put something in front of them for them to hit with a stick. Like that's so yeah. Just because the dice are like, well, we haven't rolled a 1 yet for the random encounters. Like, yeah.
Yeah, make it happen. Okay, we have a question from Titania. How did you avoid the mandatory feat problem D&D has faced with Great Weapon Master or Sharpshooter?
I think that there's probably some feats that people still feel are like insanely good to pick up. I do think I think one of the things that actually kind of helped us out there, interestingly enough, was trying to cut back on resource tracking. Um, more of the design ethos for Vagabond is telling you a lot of yes and as a result, I tried to get rid of like resource tracking or you can't use this feature until XYZ thing goes. I kind of feel that like this mandatory feat problem. I guess just playtest. Honestly, it was like, well, there was a lot of feedback that like people would kind of come up with a certain feat, and then it's like, okay, well, that has to get trimmed back down. I mean, yeah, it was. I mean, playtesting it, trying to address things that we knew were just going to be too good, and trying to get everything kind of on a not necessarily an even perfect balance. Here's the thing: balance is 99% an illusion, but it still helps to keep it in mind.
Okay, how does that mean?
So like, okay, so balance exists, but can we define balance? I don't think we can. But what we can do is we can, if we can't agree on an objective way to determine that a game is balanced, maybe we have an objective way to determine when a game is imbalanced. And I think it's more important to figure out where are the things that are breaking your game rather than figuring out where are these points that we can say, yes, this is objectively refined to where this is absolutely balanced. I would rather go around and smack gremlins that are like cropping up that people are saying are causing problems, than try to figure out numerically if everything is like pristinely checked out with all the math or whatever we want to say. Yeah, I mean, playtesting helps out a lot with that. I'm also just way more interested in mechanic changes rather than upping damage numbers. So like, we since we weren't really dishing out a whole lot that was going to change our damage structure, maybe that helped out there. So I don't know that it was necessarily one specific thing. I think it was like a collective of a few different things.
Plus, I mean, you
But
could get stuff perfectly balanced, and then you'd be like, but it's not really out of fun at the table, is it?
yeah, like it feels like you've got a whole china cabinet balanced on a needle. Like that's the thing is it just feels like I keep saying there's certain things that are juggled chainsaws. And if you let this one chainsaw go, this is the disaster. This is it doesn't matter what else you're juggling. This is the most important thing you can't drop. So like I tried to keep getting rid of juggled chainsaws throughout the game. If they would come up, this was a thing where it was like, yeah, this works. It's in the game right now, but like we're gonna have to design everything else in the game, knowing that this is a thing. So we would just kind of can that stuff that we were like, this is too worrisome. Not just that it's too good, it's that maybe in a certain combination, this isn't going to be healthy for the game in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of thing also kills expandability because let's say you want to add something else, and then you have to just how does it fit with everything else, and yeah.
Yep. Yeah. For the audience that might be like wondering of like a good example of this, Bard. Because of Bard, Wizards of the Coast has kind of tied their hands on designing more powerful fourth and fifth level spells. This is why things got toned back now in the new like D&D 2024, and why they have to pick from specific lists instead of any spell they want to go grab. They were going over and snagging Paladin and Ranger spells way earlier than the Paladin or Ranger would get them, and just outperforming them by a country mile. So, juggled chainsaw. Yeah.
Yep. Campaign is saying randoms: fight goblins, fight rats, fight a freaking kraken. Yeah.
It all like with the random table thing. I love it. I love it as a suggestion. I think if you take it as gospel, it gets out of hand. I mean, it's going to get out of hand. But like, just because the dice rolled it doesn't mean that you have to go with that. Or the Kraken is a hallucination. Or the Kraken is an illusion that was, cast by a wizard who's actually over in the bushes over there. Whatever. Like, Yeah.
Or maybe a fever dream after being bitten by the rat.
Yeah. It's the best way to use random tables is like use it if you need an idea, but keep in mind those need to be there just to fuel an idea. They are not gospel for like you have to run this thing. I would way rather have that weird encounter of like instead of a big Kraken fight, oh, it's a wizard in the tree. What's his problem? Like, what's he doing? Like, what like that to me feels so much more like TTRPG table than random Kraken. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we run. Yeah.
It does make the story a lot more interesting. Wild tree wizard. Okay, now to bounce onto something else, if you had to pick one favorite mechanic or one favorite rule from Vagabond, again, might not be a particularly special one, just might, the one that really made you happy to have designed it.
Boy, howdy. I think finally settling in on the favor and hinder mechanic. Our version of advantage works totally differently. This is inspired by Shadow of the Demon Lord. Rob Schwab or Schwab. There's a comedian that has a name very close to him, and I keep forgetting if I've got the two confused. But so the way that it works over there is like you get stacking boons and banes. Anything that's going to possibly affect the roll will add either a boon or a bane. You subtract them from one or the other to eventually get d6s that you can roll and add to your d20 roll. Mechanically, this is super cool. The reason why I like this so much is that it gets rid of crit fishing on the d20. The other cool part about this is because they stack, the way that this works is they're not all a cumulative bonus. You roll all of them and you take the highest result. So I rolled a 4 right there. Now it means advantage is way more granular and it's more of like a gentle, like there's diminishing returns to it. The problem though is that Shadow of the Demon Lord games are kind of notorious for turning into, we spent 5 minutes counting all the d6s we would need for this one roll, and so it's like, okay, so how can we kind of tweak that? So favor and hinder was, these are more like states for the roll.
Okay.
So like a roll can only ever be favored or sorry, a roll, whether or not it's favored or hindered, only 1d6 ever applies to the roll. It's you're counting the situations and circumstances that factor to make the roll, not, aha, I have 8d6s to roll and I got a 6. You know, and that kind of feels like, well, yeah, no, duh, you got a 6. Like, but yeah, I really like the way that cleaned up, and it made it so where, because we switch like favor and hinder over to that, I keep hitting my mic. Because we switched favor and hinder over into that, it opened up things where like the hunter now gets to roll 2d20s for their attack rolls on their hunter's mark. Then suddenly people are like, oh, that's advantage. And then it clicks for them like, oh, hunter's cool because it's the only one that can do 2d20s on it. Like, it opened up a whole lot more design space and made the game ultimately feel way more interesting because we can start doing weird stuff like, whenever you roll it and add it to a damage check, that favor also apply, or whenever you roll and add it to an attack check, you can also add it to a damage check, whatever that feature would be. I don't know, but yeah, that's, I really like where we settled in on what our situational bonus mechanic was. A lot.
I mean,
and, yeah.
Once you get that kind of mechanic sorted out, that does carry a lot of weight everywhere else.
Yeah, and it just swung so much better. I think specifically on a character option, like, oh, that's so hard to really pin down because I think every class has got something that I was like, oh, just it felt like such a good brain feel. I would say right now the sorcerer.
Okay.
I think you've got the basic heroes handbook and it's not in there, but you might actually check out the wizard.
Okay, one sec. There we go.
So this wizard is not going to feel anything like the 5th edition wizard.
It does not look anything like the 5th edition wizard. I love this.
Yeah. This is, I always kind of felt like with a wizard, it didn't really have a sense of like class identity in 5e. Wizard is kind of just you are spells. And I was like, no, we really want to figure this out. Like, what's the interesting stuff that we've introduced in the system so far that we can make wizard out to be something really cool? Part of this is that study mechanic I was talking about earlier. Well, they can use that study die to cast any spell, even if they don't currently know it. Like, so it was like they quickly studied up on the arcane and like a scroll or whatever, and they can spend a study die. They don't need to have the scroll or the spell, quote unquote, prepared. They can just straight up cast it if they spend the study die. So like their breadth of spells is way bigger. And because of that right there, we don't really add to the overall spells on your character sheet. You're probably not going to use that feature or even think about it unless you have a plan for it, you know.
Of course, yeah.
there's also things in here. Sculpt spell. You pay one less mana for spell delivery. If you wanted to customize the spell and like change its area, you pay one less mana to do so. So like wizard is now getting more shapes a lot easier. Whereas sorcerer's whole thing is mana. They get to tap into their own hit points to regain mana.
Okay.
And this eventually turns into them being able to channel this like state where they're just regenerating mana all the time, but they're basically gaining exhaustion as per our game called fatigue. Sorcerer is like a big, heavy. If I want to Nova something, I want to play a sorcerer. If I
Okay.
want to like carefully craft spells and like do subterfuge with magic, you want to go wizard.
Okay. So
It's yeah.
so there is that distinction between the classes because sometimes like sorcerer, wizard, pretty much the same thing. Yeah. But yeah,
I
like
think in 5e, like they're doing a good job at starting to like split that a bit more. Um, but ultimately, I think this is another thing with like not just Vancian magic here. Um, the way that they built spellcasters out, they have to be so careful with what they give them in their classes.
mhm.
And wizard and sorcerer are kind of forced to be a little bit samey because everybody else suffers by the mere fact that they get full casting potential. And since that was like their balancing metric in the early days of 5e, it's always created this disparity where like suddenly these classes don't really have their own unique identity. And yet the power they get is so good that like if we beef that up, people are going to be like, fighter doesn't get anything at all. And it's a tricky act there.
Yeah, I mean the classic. This guy gets a tactical nuke. This guy gets to swing a sword twice. It's
Right.
yeah. Sorry. So I have a question. After this, what is your perception of the most popular class, or the class you see taken most often?
Ooh, what's come up in playtest so much? Um, man, I mean, a lot of people are picking sorcerer, and they're doing the thing where so sorcerer is casting off of presence, which is like our charisma.
Okay.
Um, but the way that it's built out is because you can tap into your own hit points to cast spells. This has made a lot of people build muscle wizards or muscle sorcerers. So like they're going in
Fair
high
enough.
on might and they're able to get a lot of a class resource by tapping into their own hit points. So like we've been calling it the Super Saiyan build. People just like go in and like power up or whatever by getting all this mana and nuking one thing. But then it's like, cool, you have one hit point and like your mana's gone. But like, you did 200 damage to that carcass crawler. Sure.
So so kind of
Yeah.
you only get one shot, but you don't really need another one, kind of thing. Yeah?
If you do that, like if you wanted to do that, sure. It's what Nonat did in the play. Um, Whenever I played this with Deficient Master, Dungeon Dad, Crow, and Nonat, Nonat was like hanging on to his mana the entire time we did the dungeon crawl. And then there was one carcass crawler that like burst through the walls, and he just decided now is the time I'm gonna dump like 20 mana into this freaking thing, and just emptied it all out on it. Um, but it was like, and now he needs to go take a nap because like he can't do anything for the rest of this. So like
Hmm.
if you wanted to play that big burst, sure. The system is still going to though. If you don't, or if you decide to do that, you're not going to be left totally starved. But if you blow into your full hit points, yeah, that's probably going to be a problem. Sorcerer can straight up just vaporize itself by doing that. If you reach 0 hit points and you use that, the idea was to give the narrative of like a heroic sacrifice. If you want it to be the big arcane nuke, you can. Um, it's just that's what it does.
Okay, let's see. So inspiration follows saying Magus has been pretty popular from what I've seen. People love a spell sword.
Yeah, that's funny. I haven't seen a whole lot of Maguses. I've maybe seen one or two. I think more. I want to say most of the playtest feedback that came in on the Magus was from either like house games that other people were playing, and then GMs were telling me, their feedback. Um, yeah, I can't think of another that I had really seen. It's been really popular, but also like it's funny. I've seen more merchants than I've seen Maguses. But I think it's so weird that people that haven't played like anything quite like that in a TTRPG suddenly latch onto this weird idea of, wait, I can play a shopkeeper, and it makes people just go like, I just want to see what weird stuff we can do, like.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. I mean, like 5 fishmongers in a dungeon. That's going to be a pretty weird story. I want to know what happens to those guys. Okay, and again from inspiration follows. I think witch druid are probably some of the least taken classes so far.
And inspiration was the playtest lead, and it's funny because I think I got 2 witches in some of the playtest crews I would run, but I will definitely say we had way more fighters. It's funny how that works out. We had way more fighters. A couple people were picking Revelator, and I mean, people were toying around with magic. They were typically going sorcerer, but the thing with the witch is it does something that I don't think everybody's down for. It's a major debuffer, but it's the best debuffer in the entire game. The whole idea is it is trying to single target stack a bunch of statuses, and like that's not a niche that I think everybody really wants to go down. But yeah, it is the strongest debuffer in the entire game. But if you're just looking for magic spell slinging, you're gonna stick with wizard and you're gonna stick with sorcerer, maybe luminary. But yeah.
Okay, and question from Lily. Sorry, without spoiling anything, I guess. Which class have you had an idea for but haven't yet managed to put into practice?
Some kind of a tinkerer, an inventor, gadgeteer kind of a thing. Definitely that one has had so many ideas, but I can't overcomplicate the class. The really good thing about Vagabond is that the classes all fit on one page, and that's a big flex that I am not willing to give up just to make clockwork gnome guy happen. I'm trying to figure out what I would do on a tinkerer. We made the mystic work, so we do have a scion. Oh god, the cipher. I remember this. So I was making a rune keeper, like a rune scribe or something like that. And it was all based around the glyph delivery casting.
Okay.
But it was really hard to get anything really rolling on it. And every single time that something would come up in a play test, it just kept feeling more and more and more like, boy, I can move on to a bunch of other projects, or I can work for the next 3 months to try and make this one class happen. So I was like, we're going to table that. So the Runekeeper got moved out of the base game. I wish something had come along for that I was like, yeah, like this knocked it out of the park. Trying to think of what else. Honestly, I was just trying to cover the expectations of the core for what people were going to be wanting out of a fantasy game like this. I hadn't really had a whole lot of crazy ideas for brand new classes or anything quite like that yet. But yeah.
Actually, I had a question about this because I noticed that you've got this complexity thing here.
Mhm.
Like 3 stars for the wizard or 2 stars for the rogue and so on. Is that
Mhm.
like how do you work it out? Is it like how difficult it is to play that character? How difficult it is for a new player to be onboarded there, kind of thing?
Yeah, so if there's something that's like, here's a mechanic that you need to remember. This is going to be coming up often, and you need to check certain conditions in which this applies. Most likely, that's going to be like a 2-star complexity.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only 1-star complexity might be the fighter, if I remember right. Was there something else that I said was like a 1-star? Um, Inarguably, I think the most complicated class in the game is going to be either the merchant or the alchemist, and I tend to think it's the alchemist
More
because
than the
they
more than
have
the wizard.
yeah because alchemist really needs to learn the whole crafting subsystem, and then they get reductions on costs in order to make alchemical items. So like it's a little bit more difficult than a wizard, I would say, because a wizard gets a bunch of spells to be creative with. An alchemist is still kind of trying to piece the puzzle together.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that yeah, alchemist by far. I To people who have seen the core rulebook and seen the alchemist, I think it's kind of understood why I would say that that's a 5-star. But some people love the complexity, you know.
Yeah, fair enough.
I no character that you're going to be playing in Vagabond should feel any more complicated than even the most minimal character you're going to be playing in like Pathfinder or 5th edition, really. But
Okay, fair
yeah,
enough. Yeah, but yeah, I like the idea of having that rating in there because again, someone new to the game, you put the system in front of the options in front of them, and they're going to be like, I don't know, this looks nice, but then it's I'm not going to say unplayable, but the barrier to entry because they have to learn all those rules plus the class rules and so on. Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
so,
you could read this whole class down in 1 minute.
yeah, for sure.
Like yeah.
Okay, and species don't get as much of a spotlight, even though they are very important for people. How do you think Vagabond evolved or perfected them?
So my whole thing with like the ancestries species, that whole debate that's kind of gone on, um, I always thought it was really weird to include like cultural traits as like a racial thing in D&D.
Kind of like how
Um,
all elves are good with bows and that kind of thing.
yeah, those are the kinds of things that I'm like, that's more of your background handling that than a biological thing. So
Hmm.
like for me, the whole ethos here was just like the only thing that should be on these lists are biological traits. We're not doing any kind of stat increases because like the numbers are so low we can't afford it anyways. Um yeah, like it's it's just I have never really agreed with the idea of like of ASI being the most interesting thing about your ancestry race, whatever you want to put with it. Um, Ability score improvements put into the race or ancestry. This just leads to all kinds of like weirdness where it's like, oh well, I've got to play a stupid orc because all orcs are stupid, and that's if you want to play that, that's
Mm.
all you. That's all you. But like this leads into some rhetoric that has been mirrored in like real world racism that I was like, we got to just be aware of that. If someone's going to take issue with it, they're going to take issue with it either way. And I don't know, who knows? Maybe here in 6 months, I'm going to be making an apology video for something I didn't know I put in my game. But I honestly, I think it's more about just the effort. Like, were you at least aware of like, hey, this is a thing? Maybe not do maybe not do racial essentialism, but like yeah, I don't know. It wasn't particularly like a trying incredibly super hard on like a brand new innovative or crazy approach to the way that this happens. Yeah. I mean, all like I said, all traits are going to be biological, and that's spelled out like in very, very plain text.
Okay, let's be just one as an example. There should be something here. No, not there. Okay, so let's say that if you're halfling, you're nimble, you're squat, and you're tricksy. So yeah, I see what you mean about no ability score improvements and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Our quote unquote ability scores are called stats. They only range from 2 to 7.
Okay.
It's yeah.
But going back to what you said about maybe in 6 months' time you have to do an apology for something you weren't aware of.
Yeah.
I watched one of your videos where you were saying that you did get people to consult you on certain design elements and class elements, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I there were just some certain spots that I was like, I just maybe need to be aware of a thing that I made in here. Let me know. But it was just like, a quick one-on-one with somebody who I mean, I had kind of talked about the pugilist symbol and
Yeah.
how Jeremy from Three Black Halflings was like, it doesn't, if it was any other fist, it's fine, but it's a black fist, and that's kind of the thing. And I was like, oh, gotcha. Okay. Little things like that you're not really aware of. Yeah.
But again, it's a question of like you'd have to say, okay, I think this might be a problem. Let's have someone check it rather than you're not handing off the entire document to someone. Okay, please go over this for anything that might
Right.
be offered.
Yeah, but even that person who you hand it off to, if they like, that person can't magically say that the thing that you made was okay.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, at most they can say that there's nothing obviously not okay, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. If they're just going like, well, yep, took a look at it. You need to change this thing over here because it just, again, all context, nuance, all that stuff. It's yeah.
So, but I mean, again, that's like writing something. Again, maybe I'm a bit older, so it wouldn't even have occurred to me to check that kind of thing.
I mean, here's the thing. It's whenever a sensitivity consultant really does their job and does it well, it saves a headache. It covers some blind spots, but like there's also been cases of people who like don't really have any qualifications suddenly saying that they're a sensitivity consultant and then like just not doing their work. So like, but I mean, this is true of any position. There's plenty of people you'll get where like they do their job, they do it well, and then there's other people you'll get where it's like this guy can't even tie his own shoes. I what the so again, it's like if somebody is trying to like morality shame a thing that you made, and it like pretty much clearly, if you try to go and explain the situation to like your mom or like somebody on the streets who you ran into and you were like, hey, there's a book that was made out there and they have they have an orc that we believe is a black person based off of the lore and everything they wrote for it. People out there on the street aren't going to care. They don't. It's yeah. So if people are worried and feel like they need to hire sensitivity consultants to keep them from getting canceled on Twitter, it's that ship's going to sail one way or another. You just got to like be aware of the blind spots. And if you're ever feeling like I don't really know about this subject 100%, it always helps to just reach out and ask somebody. Sticking to your guns too hard is what tends to get people in trouble. Worse
So.
than but
But again, what I'm taking from that is basically do your research, and if you're still not certain, ask, which is an extremely reasonable approach.
But it's also the kind of thing where like, you can do your research all day long. Nobody's gonna have the final say as to whether or not a thing that you made is offensive. you know,
Yeah, no,
like
absolutely.
it's
No, I'm pretty sure that I mean you could write the most milk toast piece of content anywhere, anytime, and someone can still say, "Yep, that's offensive."
yep, it's yeah.
So, Lily saying, "Have you talked about the Gonzo supplement?"
I have not.
What is
I
the
did
Gonzo
an
supplement?
update where I mentioned it, but I am all I really know for sure is what content we've got in there so far. But no, I haven't talked about it at all. Uh yeah, with my real job, I'm a session guitar player. So for the last like month and a half, I've been playing shows non-stop. So I'm getting back in on writing and everything and live streaming and all that this week. But yeah.
Okay, but what is the Gonzo supplement exactly?
Oh, this is gonna be like a pseudo psychedelic, just super weird fantasy kind of side of it.
Ooh.
I wanted to like this is where we're gonna throw in scions. There's other like there's weird classes I'm looking at throwing in, like the hallucinist. This is gonna be like an illusionist, but like I think that the word illusionist is just so lame. And I was like, no, it's gonzo, drug fueled. Okay, hallucinist. Cool. That seems, yeah. God, there was another one on there as well that I'm struggling to remember right now. Uh, I might have been thinking about the Zodiac at that time. I'm not totally sure. But basically, gonzo fantasy. Trying to make more absurdist stories. What can we do to maybe give people a little bit of fuel and like let's make a weird monster that you're going to run into that's like something out of a fever dream and try to get one stat block to cover like as many as I can there. Um, all of the previous ancestries that kind of fit this idea, they're more monstrous. They're going to be printed in here as well. Um, oh god, spaghetti grindhouse. Um, that is still an idea. It would have been way more of an idea had the game funded for more. Um,
Okay, what is
yeah.
Spaghetti Grindhouse exactly? Because it's like,
It was me using the Vagabond engine to basically make a Tarantino, like a Quentin Tarantino storyteller game.
good lord.
Um,
Uh,
yeah.
it's like,
Do what?
I'm not sure which is most what sounds most appealing, whether it's Fear and Loathing in Mordor or Spaghetti Grindhouse, because they both sound awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to make this just total grindhouse like flick kind of a thing. Um, there's a there is a really cool video game I use as a reference called Wet. This came out like 2009, and it was the last time I felt like a video game actually captured this vibe. And I so I was like, yeah, let's do a. I wanted to write a genre that I had not seen a TTRPG handle yet, and the Tarantino Kill Bill style thing kind of gets covered, but not really from the perspective of like, no, straight up, we're playing sword slinging like I don't know, hot chicks and gunslingers and stuff like that. Like that was my vibe there. Um Spaghetti Grindhouse, I had a whole like release idea for. Again, tariffs are gonna be a factor in whether or not we can afford to do more projects like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like again, not. I mean, things that you wouldn't have even ever thought about, probably.
It's yeah, I just saw the other day. So this company right here, Boss, they
Okay.
make guitar pedals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're based out of Japan. And I just saw the other day this pedal right here. Well, usually a Boss pedal isn't going to cost you any more than $100. They're known for being affordable, durable, all this other stuff. For the first time in like 20 years or so, the Boss Distortion 1 has jumped up like $70 a pedal. So it's like, yeah, we're seeing some insanity going on. But anyways,
Yeah, I mean, like And like we were talking earlier, I mean, like there's no way of telling what will happen tomorrow or within a week or within 3 months.
Nope.
So yeah, looks like someone is playing with the random number generator.
At this point, yeah, it's just here. What do we got?
It's a kraken.
It's now a 34% tariff. Like dude's just back there rolling d20s, man.
Okay, let's see another question here. What is your favorite ancestry you made, and do they change things mechanically a lot or not that much? What is your favorite ancestry?
Honestly, once we get the mimic out there, that's going to be really funny to see what people
Wait.
actually make happen with it.
You mean a mimic as a player character?
Oh yeah.
Oh
Here,
god.
I'll get you the artwork. Maxwell already started working on this one, and yeah, there we go. So Maxwell started working on. We had the art piece made for another like a Patreon exclusive like 2 years ago, I want to say.
Okay.
But it's already got traits and everything like that. We just never got to play test it, and then whenever time came to cut some stuff, I was like, we're probably going to cut the stuff we didn't get to play test. Here you go. That's the artwork for it.
Okay, got it.
Oh, and I guess I could drop a little bit of an exclusive here. We did get the artwork for the heartbeat back.
Okay, let me just throw this up on the screen. In the meantime, yeah, Onyx Dunes is saying, I love living through a constant historical event. Yeah, you know the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times? We are living in interesting times.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, oh, this artwork is amazing.
Times. Yeah.
So remind me, this is not for the psychedelic thing, yeah? This is for the regular fantasy thing.
This will be going in the Gonzo book because Gonzo, people have kind of referred to it as like, this is the one where like monstrous parties should be a thing.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so.
I was looking for the other artwork on this.
I mean, it would be kind of, I think it would fit perfectly if you've got like 3 monsters and one guy who's tripping so hard that he just sees them as normal people.
Yeah, I've got those. Oh yeah, one of the other ancestors is going to be an awakened animal. So like if you want to play the psychic dog, you can do that.
So again, we're not talking special dog race or a special dog person. It's literally a dog who can talk.
So this is going to be like an awakened animal. So you're not really stuck at just being a dog. It's like if you wanted to be if you wanted to be a, talking cat or something like that, or psychic, whatever. Yeah, we can get you playing a hamster.
I'm laughing that you're throwing all these options out.
Well, and I know people really love the modularity. People love the idea of having all these different options. This is the hard thing with playtesting, though, is like as many options as I was throwing out there, we just couldn't get enough data. Like that was the thing, is there not everything was getting play tested. It's rough.
Yeah, I guess it would be the case. Yeah, you need a much larger playtest with all those variables. But I mean, one thing I love is that basically, look, what we're playing is mostly make believe with some rules. And here you're saying, okay, no, forget these constraints. Just here, be a hamster. You don't need to be a dwarf or an elf or yeah. Okay, so do ancestries change a lot of your gameplay or not that much?
Some ancestries I think will. I think it's kind of hard to say that the Draken doesn't feel like it's got its own play style. This is like our Dragonborn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and then I guess here's one of. I guess we can do two of the other ancestries. One sec. Yeah, I got these in. Okay, here's the art that we got for two of the other ancestries.
Ooh, exclusives.
I've been sitting on them for a little while, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I need to talk about that." uh, yeah, here you go.
Okay, let's give it a second. Okay, coming up. Oh, this one looks kind of friendly.
Yeah, these are from Commodores or Pure O on Twitter, Instagram, all that good business. So that one's going to be for the satyr, and then the other one is going to be our harpy.
Okay, Harpy coming up.
So those are more examples of like the kind of monstrous player character like ancestries. And it was always really important to me with the art direction of this book that we stuck to an idea that didn't feel too hyper realistic or anything quite like that. Um, I always kind of felt like 5e and Pathfinder going in that route put such a weird expectation on like other people making their own material,
Mm-hmm.
and not everybody can afford to hire Magic the Gathering artists to make their thing. So I wanted Vagabond to still kind of feel like we're this game needs to have a style to it. And I'm really glad that the artists that we've worked with so far have just been able to like flesh out a style that feels not inaccessible to people.
I'm really liking I mean, both of these look like the kind of what you would get in a good children's picture book. I'm talking, really good ones
Yeah.
from the 80s or 90s. And at
Yeah.
the same time,
Puree
yeah.
is fantastic at drawing like it feels charming, but it's like it's kind of that thing where it's like it's a bunny, but it's holding a dagger, you know?
Okay, and we have a question from Rodrigo. What about Minotaur?
Okay, so here's my thing with the Minotaur. Um, I want a Minotaur to not just be a big bull guy, right? It was just a big bull guy to just play a beast folk, which will be making a return. Um, because like in Vagabond, I wanted the Minotaur to feel like a an elephant sized horror. I don't like Minotaurs as just like, oh, it's a dude, but he has a bull's head. I really love what like Barony does with their Minotaur. The Minotaur over there is like a 20-foot tall, unstoppable monster. And it's like I love how just horrific that sounds. Um and yeah, so like Minotaur as a player character ancestry, I'm like kind of on. There will be other options that could like kind of do something similar, but I want to save the Minotaur to be a thing that is like, you guys need to be terrified of this thing. Like you guys should be, you know. But
Okay, I'm getting more and more intrigued by all these things. But yeah, I mean, like so far, yeah, the Gonzo supplement looks pretty awesome. Like, yes.
I'm trying to figure out not just what we're putting in there, but how's it gonna look. So that'll be its whole other thing. Yeah.
Okay, and how are you planning the role for that? Will it be kind of like its own Kickstarter? Will it be part of this Kickstarter?
Wait. So, kind of like, how can people get involved with it, or
No, it's not just how they can get involved with it, but like, will it be a separate release? Will it be?
oh, everything's shipping out at the same time?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. No. This second Kickstarter was supposed to be helping us out with tariffs that were announced at the time, and now that that's changed, we're kind of like, well, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean,
like,
like,
I I I threw a Hail Mary on the Kickstarter where I was like, if there's enough people that'll like want to see it succeed, maybe they'll back it, or maybe we'll find like some of Kickstarter's natural audience to come on. What? Oh yeah. Sure. We're on a live stream. Yeah. It's my lunch. So yeah, for me, I knew with this like Kickstarter, especially the final one, I was like, I hated asking. You know, it was like people have already backed this thing. But I had enough others that were like, Taron, you ran it over on GameFound, you missed out on Kickstarter's marketing. Just going ahead and run it over there because I promise you there's enough people who like just didn't even know that this is a thing because you ran it over there. As soon as I go back over to Kickstarter, there's enough people that are backing it to where like we're not having to worry about some of the extra costs. But you know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Bless you.
Thank you. I do hope it does work out because, again, after all the work you put into it, it would be a pity to have it get stuck on that.
We're gonna see what happens. I have no idea. To everybody listening who hasn't looked into all this stuff with the tariffs and everything, it's like this is gonna start affecting you whether you like it or not. It's happening.
Okay, so I'm just going to drop you the link to your Discord in the chat over here, and I'll probably put it in a pinned comment as well. So for everyone who wants to find out more about Vagabond and the Gonzo edition and make Spaghetti Grindhouse happen, please. Where else can they find you? I mean, they can find you on YouTube, obviously.
Yeah, we do have the Indestructible Boys Lair Discord. I'm here on YouTube. I'm over on like really here on YouTube and Twitch. I do mainly live streams these days. And you know, I try to just branch out of whatever sounds like a fun stream. So like I don't know, sometimes it's gonna be, I know like tomorrow I'm planning on doing music Mondays from here on out. So like one of the most fun things about my streams has just been randomly like talking music for like 2 or 3 hours. Last week I built a guitar pedal on stream, so like that was fun. But yeah, most of the stuff that I'm doing is TTRPG related. But if you're also into music, come check that out too. I'm on the DMs Guild. I'm on the Land of the Blind Shopify, and I feel like there's something else that I am forgetting. I think that's it. I hope.
I think that should cover most of it. So, yeah, actually, I think we had agreed to 1 hour 30, but I've kept you for almost 2 hours here, so sorry about it. And I think I should let you get to your lunch now.
I appreciate it, man. Well, yeah, thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. I mean, like, I really enjoyed our discussion. Oh, yeah, thank you again for joining us. Guys, I'll put the Discord link in the comments again for anyone who's watching after the event. And next week we'll be back with Tom and Kyle to talk about people from the classical world. So yeah, that should be interesting. Taron, thanks again, and everyone have a lovely week. Bye.